Yeah, thank you. So I am Sriram Subramanian. I'm a graduate student at HUA. I'm an IT professional by profession. So I have seen conflicts in modern workplaces firsthand, and also the tech layoffs around 2023, which was massive and brutal. So that set me thinking, like, what can be done, and how do we apply Hindu Dharmaśāstras in modern workplaces? So with that, let me start. Oh, by the way, my IT profession background, all the images are created using AI. And sorry, I turned sorry, wrong button. All the images were created using AI, and definitely they've gone better. Can you, it's not going next. Oh, thank you. The down arrow. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So when we talk about, I'll go into this one. When we talk about modern conflicts in modern workplaces, I started looking into like what is the current literature, and do we have any existing material applying Hindu Dharma Shastras? We have seen a lot of material, lot of applications of Hindu Dharma Shastras in corporate, right? Corporate monks or corporate gurus talking about leadership styles and whatnot, but very little on how do we resolve conflicts. And when you look at conflicts in modern workplaces, largely three buckets: substantive, effective, and process. Substantive are more about when there's a conflict on what needs to be done, what is the right thing to do, what are the corporate goals, do I have a conflict, do I agree with what my management or my company thinks as the goals. Affective are more emotional, there's a clash of values, there are clash of emotions, and process is more about we are on same page on what needs to be done, but how do we do that? Is it my way versus highway kind of approach. So those three types. And then the causes could be many, organizational dysfunction, organizational structures, power imbalances. I won't go into all the list, but largely like there's a whole bucket of causes, including emotional value mismatches and all those things. And then consequences, interestingly, like, sometimes conflicts, at least in corporate workplaces, could be positive, like functional consequences. Sometimes, like, conflicts will help in better performance, but dysfunctional conflicts are resulting in low morale, employee retention, employee detention, decrease in productivity, and things like that. So with that, let's look into, and also there are established processes, methods for resolving conflicts. Now let's look into how do we improve them, or what can be done. How do we bring in Hindu Dharma Shastras to improve those methods, right? Now, pardon me for this one. I was laughing at myself and like, how can I summarize? First, I started with the overview of Dharma Shastras. You can see the images, but then even overview, one slide is not going to be enough. And then imagine my challenge in summarizing that in 500 words or so in my paper. But largely speaking, however we call that, we agree that, we have Shruti and Smritis. Smritis consist of the Itihasas, Puranas, other Smritis like Manusmriti and whatnot. And then I, it's impossible for someone to parse everything and forget me, like even learned scholars. I'm going to take a sliver of a sliver of a sliver, like Mahabharata and part of that Bhagavad Gita, and even summary of like key things from that, and then see if we can apply them in modern workplaces, right? Or conflict resolution in modern workplaces. We all agree that all of them are Vedas, and as Vishwaji was quoting, the source of Dharma in morning keynote, right? So everything traces back to Vedas. But let's take Bhagavad Gita for example. Lord Krishna goes on and on. In fact, it's one of the best dialogues in conflict resolution at a workplace, at the war field for a Kshatriya, and he resolves the conflict that Arjuna had. But apart from other things, the three things that stand out are karma, dharma, and swadharma. Oftentimes, conflict arises personally when we don't know what our dharma is, or when we don't do our swadharma, or we get too attached to karma. But in modern workplaces, I mean, ignoring the resistance that one might face in a right space society, right space culture, which is a modern workspace, largely speaking, if we stick to these tenets, one may say that we may not even have conflicts. Okay, now we have a conflict. What can we do? And let's look into Mahabharata, right? Mahabharata stresses a lot more virtues like Satya, Ahimsa, Paramo Dharma, and all those things. Mahabharata also has numerous dialogues as way of resolving conflicts. The biggest or the best dialogue being the Bhagavad Gita. But then we have Vyada Gita, we have Yaksha Prashna, and we have numerous conversations that Dhritarashtra would have Vidura, Sanjay, and things like that. But when that fails, when dialogue fails, when communications fail, Then Mahabharata also shows like diplomacy and negotiation. Who's better than Lord Krishna in diplomacy? Lord Krishna tries that, but that also fails. Yudhishthira tries for negotiations, settling down for 5 villages, that also fails. Then comes a war. Now, but we all can agree that the basic tenets across Dharmaśāstras, the 3 tenets, and then there are other things. Now taking it further, then I'm looking into, can we apply the techniques of, what are the techniques that we can parse out and we can apply at conflict resolution. 2 things that come out: dialogue and communication, and mediation and arbitration. Now, dialogue and communication, what can be done better? It's not something new, but what can be done? How can we apply dharmic principles? How can they be rooted on satya and ahimsa? Satya is basically, it's not just transparency. It's not just stating about being factual. It's not just stating about like top line and bottom line, but there's more truth to it, right? We will see some instance of how just the facts don't not necessarily represent being transparent. How can be done better? And then mediation, arbitration. But all these things we can say like the 3 things that we can do better: introspection, restorative justice, and mindfulness. Introspection, for example, we all we in different forms we do Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Like those things can also be applied in corporate world, like in a way that how do we listen better? How can we listen to the inner truth or unsaid truth? How can we be more reflective, more contemplative about what is really going on? How can we be more empathetic to the consequence of our actions? And things like that, being more mindful during mediation and arbitration. So with that, so again, I want to summarize. Among the Dharmaśāstras, I took a sliver, Mahabharata, and after that, Bhagavad Gita. I wanted to get the capture of 1 or 2 specific techniques. This is no way, complete. This is a work in progress. This is more of showing a ability or potential of what if scenario. And then that takes us to a particular case study of tech layoffs, right? 2023, whoever's in the industry or whoever connected to the industry might have seen this. More than 150,000 people were laid off over a period of few quarters. And then, many companies went through that. I have taken like, I will give you an example of these 3 companies. In my paper, the third one was Amazon, but for better representation, for better discussion, I brought in Google here. But if you look at the paper, I'll be talking about Twitter, Microsoft, and Amazon. Now, from a business point of view, we can justify layoffs. These things happen, but how it happened, and that's a part that was lacking. And in these 3 things stood out because Twitter, almost 80% people were laid off, right? And there's no compassion, no empathy. Just like, I'm going to lay it off because this one person purchased the company and then just went about with it. No concerns about what's consequences, what do we do, what's going to be the immigration status of those immigrants and things like that. Microsoft, on the other hand, did only 10% of laid off only 10% of employees. But the way it went about was, on January we get an email saying that, oh, we're going to cut over a period of 3 months, we're going to cut 10% off. They know the count, but we don't know who is going to get laid off. And the teams would be gone in a week or after a week. The other teams would come to know of that through external communication, and then they will wonder, like, am I going to be the next? So there's a lot of anxiety, uncertainty over a period of time, right? And then another thing to notice there, at the same time, Microsoft wrote off about $1 billion towards settling these layoff-related expenses, while investing more than about $10 billion into OpenAI. So you can see the value of employee versus what's going to happen, like the top line versus bottom line. And then Google, it was interesting because you wouldn't get an email because you were laid off, so you won't know. And you would go to the company, you will swipe your badge, but you wouldn't be let in because you were laid off. So a lot of people who would check their email on their mobile phones, they didn't see it. They thought, oh, maybe there's a glitch or something. Let me go to the office and see what's happening. They swipe their badges, they were not let in. So see how lacking empathy it was, right? So these cases, how it could have been different. Again, like bringing in the principles of satya, ahimsa, and daya, right? All these things could have been done. So now Microsoft spoke a lot about why we are doing it, like but is there truth to it? Like when you say that macroeconomic conditions, blah blah blah, but you are going to invest $10 billion over hundreds and thousands of people. So what is where is truth there? Is that a full truth or complete truth, right? And similarly, like, have you tried other things like, can you arrange employees internally? Can you minimize, or can you provide more counseling? Can you provide healthcare support and things like that? They all can be done better. That shows more daya and ahimsa, like not hurting the employees, right? And then other things are also like, dialogue and communication and mediation, like, where there are third-party arbiters involved, where they're empathetic to the listeners, to the employees. All those things are questionable. So now these things, when you apply the dharmic framework, now you can see that, like, it shows potential of better decision making. I'm not going to read all those things, but at least there's a potential of, like, treating these things empathetically, with more empathy and more compassion, and also being more truthful about what the reality is. And hopefully when these situations happen next, the employers are in a better situation to handle that with more compassion in mind, and also being more truthful about what they are doing. So that's the idea. That's the application to a hypothetical application to the what happened. But of course, there are more challenges to this, right? Because the biggest challenge would be, like, modern is more of a rights-based society. Many of you might have known Microsoft CEO got into trouble when he spoke about how he thinks karma would, like, follow the karma system will take care. But but he got in trouble, like, for a rights-based modern society, applying our principles could be like, we'll get into this resistance and incompatibility. So we have to be careful about that. And then taking the next, like, this is only a theory phase, right? Do some pilot work to validate what is the potential is. So having said that, so the conclusion is that though ancient, however ancient the Dharmaśāstras are, they are the workspaces. There's a lot of potential in conflict resolution in modern workplaces. More work needs to be done to validate that assumption. With that, thank you all. Namaste.